This is Mike W. with World War II with Mike W. and the history of the 95 Years' War. Just a quick reminder, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and also click on the notification bell. And please leave a comment below. This helps me and my channel. In this video, I will again be talking about the time period between 1930 and 1933, but in France and Spain. In France, things went quite differently during this time. The Great Depression took a few years to show up in France. There was a continued labor shortage due to the loss of life during World War I. This made it so there wasn't the unemployment spike that occurred in other nations. The French also had invested heavily in gold during the 1920s instead of stocks and real estate. This sheltered them from the initial worldwide financial shock. Things do fall apart in 1932, but unemployment never reaches the catastrophic levels that occur elsewhere. But there is the beginning of political strife that continues throughout the 1930s. This division of the French people impacts their future. An important military development begins during this time. An elaborate defensive line between France and Germany is started in 1929. It is named after France's Minister of War from 1929 to 1931, André Maginot. It was designed to prevent a future attack from Germany. It was actually built along the entire border between France and Germany. It began in the south at the Swiss border and continued north to the border with Luxembourg. France had agreements with Belgium and Luxembourg and the Netherlands to fight together if invaded by Germany. So it was deemed unnecessary to continue building any farther north. André Maginot had convinced the French government for the need for such a defensive structure by citing the French army leaving the occupation of the Rhineland in 1930, in keeping with the Treaty of Versailles, and the decline in population due to the losses from World War I. It was promoted as a peaceful defense structure, not some offensive weapon. Construction of this barrier lasted until 1936. Its design was based on the way warfare had been fought during the First World War, especially the Battle of Verdun, where fortifications held up to artillery bombardment and infantry attack. As a defensive fortress, it was well built and well designed. Its purpose was to stop an invasion long enough for France to mobilize its armies and then keep the fighting off of French soil. The problem with the Maginot Line is that it ended in the north at the Luxembourg-Belgium area. Originally, or at the beginning of its construction, as I said, Belgium and Luxembourg were in agreement with France to fight off any attack by Germany. The design of the line forced any German attack to be concentrated in the plains of Europe, in Belgium. This is where they would be dealt with by the combined armies of Britain, France, and Belgium. Then, Belgium and Luxembourg declare their neutrality and are allied with nobody. France begins to and try to continue its construction farther north, but only half-heartedly. There were no defenses built in front of the Ardennes forest. Hey, it's impenetrable to large armies and, like, say, tanks. Nothing to worry about here. Okay, we finally move to our final country. For this period of time, it is very important what happens here in Spain. In 1930, Miguel Primo de Rivera was forced to resign as Prime Minister of Spain due to an economic crisis. Not the Great Depression, but internal social policies where he had promised the world to the people of Spain, and then first tried to tax the rich for the money. It didn't work. Then he raised money the old-fashioned way. He borrowed it to pay for everything. At least that doesn't happen anymore, like in Venezuela. King Alfonso XIII, whom I talked about in my video, The Royal Connection, called for new democratic elections, ushering in the Second Republic. If you also remember from that previous video, the First Republic, formed back in 1873, only lasted a year. Then the monarchy was restored. There were elections held in April of 1931, and they went overwhelmingly to the Spanish Republican parties, forcing King Alfonso to abdicate the throne and flee the country. These are not to be confused with the Republican Party in the United States. Completely different elephant. The government of the Second Republic was led by this guy, Manuel Azaña. This government consisted of a coalition of the middle-class Republican parties and the right wing of the Spanish Socialist Party. Everything was fine for a while. There were attempts at slowly instituting capitalism with a focus on building a middle class. Change of this type does not come easy, and there was a lot of underlying resistance to the move forward in a capitalistic system. This would also include land reform. Land reform, probably the biggest issue in Spain. Agricultural products accounted for half of the country's income and 2/3 of its exports. 70% of Spain's population worked the land, yet a small class of landowners controlled 2/3 of all of the country's arable land, most of it held in large estates. Same old story. Peasants rise up, demanding redistribution of the land to the millions of poor, but this is not capitalism, a problem for the new Republican government. Also, the land is actually mortgaged by its owners to the max. So the Spanish banking system is heavily invested in it. What a quandary. Workers wanted pay increases along with unemployment assistance. They also wanted an end to the old ways and the removal of the monarchist managers. And that's from the days of King Alfonso. Everyone wants these promises and the new way of capitalism, and they want it now. You would think they were a bunch of teenagers without patience. Totally changing a nation's economy, government system, government bureaucracy, farming systems, manufacturing system, and all the rest takes time. It takes years. The Republican government was paralyzed by the demands of all the factors, so they were incapable of anything. Things fall apart quickly. In less than 2 months, the Republican Socialist coalitions started fighting with each other and the workers' movement. In May of 1931, members of the Civil Guard shot 10 workers after clashing with monarchist groups. Then, in July of 1931, a general strike broke out in Seville in support of a walkout by local telephone workers. The government declared martial law. 40 workers died and more than 200 were wounded in the resulting street battles. Now the anarchists step in. In January of 1932, they launched an insurrection in the Castilian mining town of Alto Llobregat. It is suppressed by the military almost immediately. In January of 1933, anarchists called for an insurrection in support of a strike of railway workers. There were uprisings in Catalonia, Valencia, and parts of Andalusia. They were all crushed immediately by the centralized Spanish army. Then, a week later, the anarchists in the small village of Casa Viejas rose up and proclaimed a libertarian society. The army moved in and killed hundreds of peasant anarchists. Pictures of this massacre of peasants in the press basically ended the Anzana government, but the losses sustained took a heavy toll on the anarchists. Thousands of Union militants were arrested, and a wave of anarchist uprising ended. It was time for the right-wing extremists to make their move. With the Anzana government discredited and the anarchists pretty much wiped out, the right-wing parties, who actually despised the peasant class, used this opportunity to take control. In November of 1933, new elections were called. The right won an overwhelming victory, bringing on what became known as El Bienio Negro, the 2 black years. The right-wing government that took power in November of 1933 was headed by Alessandro Lerroux. Due to the rise of fascism in Germany and also in Austria, there was fear of the same thing happening in Spain by the working class. Strikes were held throughout the nation, with only one truly showing the power of the working class, and that was the mining center of Asturias. It was very effective, but the differing leftist parties could not see eye to eye. They were never able to put together a coalition strong enough to compete with the right wing and the fascists. This division within all of Spain will lead to a tragedy of humankind and a practice ground for the actual fighting war for other nations that are not in the not too distant future. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell, and most importantly, share this with a friend. And you can do this by telling them to go to historyonyoutube.com. Oh, and don't hesitate to leave a comment below. And thank you for your patience with my inability to speak Spanish. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.